Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are doing great. And now we welcome you all to the Indirect Tax Colloquium for the month of August 2021, organized by Tax Connect and Bill GST. This is our fourth webinar, and we are conducting webinars every month. So we request you to join for the webinar every month. Further, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Vivek Jalan. Mr. Vivek Jalan is a qualified chartered accountant, qualified LLB and LLM. He is a chairman of Ease of Doing Business Committee in Bengal Chamber of Commerce and member at various chambers. He is a regular speaker at various professional forums on various key areas, indirect and indirect taxes. Further, I request you all that during the session, if you have any queries, please write it in the chat box. All questions will be answered at the time of question and answer session. Further, I request to mute yourself and keep your video off during the deliberation. Now, I would like to request Mr. Vivek Jalan to take the session forward. Over to you, Vivek, sir.
Thanks, Priyanka. And thank you all the participants for joining on this fourth colloquium of ours. And thanks, Samir, for joining hands with Tax Connect. And
thanks, Vivek. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Samir. So opening remarks, Samir, before we start. Yes, Samir.
Yeah. Yeah, Vivek.
Should we start?
Yeah. Please carry on.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining. And this month there have been a lot of new developments, and of course there is the RODTEP scheme, which has not made people happy. And trade and industry, they are certainly going across now to various forums and talking about this RODTEP scheme and how it can be improved. So we'll discuss about the RODTEP scheme. Lot of other developments in customs. AEO T1 licenses do not require renewal, but you need to file an annual return now. So from 1st October, you will need to file an annual return for AEO T1 licenses. Haryana now has brought out another reimbursement of SGST scheme in the same lines as that of Assam. So and that is not for only the big companies or the large mega projects. It is even for MSMEs. Therefore, we'll discuss that scheme of reimbursement of SGST in Haryana. And now that Haryana has brought it in the same lines as Northeast, I think many states will follow suit. So a key area for indirect tax professionals to add tremendous values in these reimbursement schemes. We are working already in the Assam reimbursement scheme for a large corporate. And I can tell you this scheme for your business can be a real value add to your bottom line. We'll discuss on that. Some key developments in GST as far as input tax credit is concerned, and some of our concerns with the drafting, the way the colons and semicolons have been used in the act. That has seen a lot of evolution during this month. So we'll discuss on that and many other important issues on investigation, search, seizures, and summons under GST. So one by one, slowly and steadily, we'll keep on going. And as usual, we have many friends over here, many of the professionals. Please do keep typing your questions in the chat box. we'll answer all your questions at the end of the session. In fact, last 15-20 minutes, I'll try to keep a little more today for question and answers, because there are a lot of questions, and finally we have to extend for answering the questions. Now, friends, to start with, all of us know that every comma, every punctuation used in the act has a lot of meaning. We will deliberate on section 17(5)(b). In fact, we have been telling this from April 2020, when across the country views were taken on health insurance. And I'll just explain to you. And to read the clauses and sub-clauses holistically, and you should also know not to mix one clause with the other. So let us just understand this first, and thereafter we'll deliberate on it. And advanced ruling authority that has further upheld Tax Connect's view, which we had taken in April 2020. So 17 subsection 5 clause B states that the following supply of goods or services or both would not be eligible for input tax credit. You see the last word out here, 17(5)(b)(1), health insurance. So the supply of goods or services or both for health insurance would not be allowed as an input tax credit, where GST is payable on the health insurance. Thereafter, there is a colon. Then, provided that input tax credit in respect of goods or services or both shall be available where an inward supply of such, the use of the word such is important, goods or services or both, or as an element of tax, goods or services or both, is used by a registered person for making an outward supply of the same category of goods or services or both, or as an element of taxable composite or mixed supply. So I will focus only on health insurance now. I will come to 3 or 4 of the items in 17(5)(b), right, which are under contention, which we have contended in various forums also. So we'll again try to read it. We'll spend 1 minute on understanding first the law and the intention of the law when it is using punctuations in the act. The supply of the service of health insurance will be blocked under 17(5)(b), provided that the input tax credit on this health insurance is used by a registered person for making an outward supply, right? This is what this 17(5)(b)(1) states as far as health insurance is concerned. Now, there is a semicolon after 17(5)(b) clause 1, small Roman 1. Thereafter, there is 2. Thereafter, there is 3. If you come to clause Roman small 3, there is a semicolon again. Sorry, there is a colon again after the word concession. And after the colon, again there is a proviso, provided that the input tax credit in respect of goods or services or both shall be available where it is obligatory for an employer to provide the same to its employees under any law for the time being in force. Friends, this is our respectful submission. The provision to clause 3 cannot be merged or cannot be adjoined or connected to clause 1, making it a provision to clause 1, right? Therefore, the provision, the receipt of services of health insurance, even when it is obligatory for the employer to provide it to the employees, shall be blocked under GST. This was laid down by even the Honorable Supreme Court in the PIL filed by Sri Jayant Verma versus Union of India in 2018, and it's the Honorable Apex Court held that a semicolon separates two expressions, showing that they are not inextricably connected. Therefore, friends, the provision to clause 3 is not connected to clause 1. Hence, even if the provision of health insurance or mediclaim is mandatory by the employer to give to the employee, it will still be continued to be blocked under 17(5)(b)(1), because provision to 3 cannot be connected to clause 1, right? Many of the industries, many consultants also took the view in April 2020, when you remember during the first phase of the pandemic, there was a notification by the Ministry of Health Affairs that health insurance has to be given to all the employees by all the employers. It was for an interim period of, I think, around 1.5 months or so. But health insurance, still it is our respectful submission that health insurance, even if it is obligatory by the employer under a law for the time being in force, would continue to be blocked under 17(5)(b)(1). Similarly, food and beverage. Now I come to food and beverage. 17(5)(b)(1), the first limb, food and beverage, the first service. So the receipt of service of food and beverage, other than when it is used for further supply of food and beverage, would continue to be blocked even if it is obligatory under the Factories Act by the employer to provide to the employee, right? Therefore, wherever we are providing canteen services to our employees, even if it is obligatory under the Factories Act, it is our submission that the input tax credit will continue to be blocked. The question to be asked in this case is, would if the employer is taking some money from the employee as a reimbursement of the expenditure done by the employer for food and beverage provision to the employee, would that be considered as a supply? The answer there is also a no, as also held by the advanced ruling authorities by Gujarat and Karnataka. Although we do not discuss advanced ruling authority judgments many a times, because many of the times we have seen that the judgments of the advanced ruling authorities, including the appellate AARs, are more tilted towards the revenue. But still we get an understanding of how the jurisprudence is shaping up across the country, what is the view of the department, which in future they would be taking during our assessments. So in this case, wherever a reimbursement is taken by the employer from the employees of a part of the canteen services provided, our respectful submission is that it would not be treated as a supply, as also envisaged by July 2017 press release by the CBIC. And however, the input tax credit of such food and beverages also should not be taken. Friends, 17(5)(b) is under contention. We are contending it in one of the commissionerates in India. where one of the Honorable Joint Commissioners has taken a view on this word vessels or aircrafts, which is stated in 17.5b(1), right? You see, the words are highlighted. You can see it on your screen, vessels and aircraft. So the supply of goods or services of or in respect of vessels or aircraft would be blocked under 17.5b(1), other than those referred to in AA, clause AA, 17.5 AA. Now, what does clause AA says? Vessels or aircraft, except when they are used for four purposes: for the supply of vessels or aircraft, transportation of passengers, imparting training or navigating such vessels, or imparting training of flying such aircraft. So friends, 17.5 AA covers vessels and aircrafts would be blocked. The credit on vessels of aircraft would be blocked until unless they are used for four purposes as specified in A to D therein. So the question is, why is vessel or aircraft mentioned in 17.5b(1)? Does it refer to the service provided by the vessel or aircraft? Right? This was a view taken by the Joint Commissioner, and she disallowed the credit of air tickets which were used for flying of employees for business purpose, for the purpose of their business meetings, etc. Our respectful submission in this position is that the service of flying of passengers is not provided by the vessel. It is provided by the vessel owner or the aircraft company. Many a times these aircrafts or vessels are on lease. So the services in respect to vessels or aircraft, like insurance, like repairs, maintenance, etc., that is covered by 17.5b(1), and not the services provided by the airlines by means of traveling of passengers to and fro. That is not blocked under 17.5b(1), right? So this is our respectful submissions in section 17.5b(1). More and more issues would be raised under this clause, I am sure, going forward as the GST era evolves. So we should be very careful when we are interpreting the law, and we should be very careful of each and every comma, semicolon, and colon used in the act, right? So it was held in the case of Tata Motors by the Gujarat Advance Ruling Authority that the input tax credit on food and beverages for further supply for provision of canteen services would be blocked under 17.5b(1), as we have discussed, and the reimbursement taken by the employers from the employees would not be a supply and would not be liable to GST. Similar view was taken in the case of Dakshina Kannada Cooperative Milk Producers Union by the Karnataka Advance Ruling Authority, right? Generally, many a times the Advance Ruling Authority, as I said, take a view which is pro-revenue, but herein I feel they have taken a balanced view, although we all know that these rulings are specific to the applicant, but yeah, we can get an understanding of what the department is thinking, at least in those states. So Gujarat and Karnataka can well take this view. Friends, another contentious issue, 17.5d, right, is on goods or services for construction of immovable property other than plant and machinery. So 17.5D blocks the goods and services or both received by taxable person for construction of immovable property on his own account, right? Not for any other person, including when such goods or services or both are used in course or furtherance of business. However, when you come to the explanation, it says that for the purposes of clause D, the expression construction includes reconstruction, renewal, additions, alterations, renovation, repairs to the extent of capitalization. The words to the extent of capitalization are the most important words in this clause, and our respectful submissions is the law is very clear that in case you are capitalizing construction expense or reconstruction, repair, addition, renovation, alteration, if you are capitalizing it, it would be blocked under 17.5D. If you are not capitalizing it, it would not be blocked. Further, for plant and machinery, any expenditure, even for an immovable property, by for foundation or structural support other than land, building, or other civil structures, pipelines outside the premises would continue to be available, but it should not be capitalized, right? Absolutely. Of course, if you are capitalizing the GST amount also, then you will not be getting the GST benefit. You will be getting the benefit of depreciation under Section 32 of the Income Tax Act. Friends, again, there is a confusion many a times that what if we are not capitalizing the GST amount, but we are capitalizing the base amount? Many a times this question is asked by the taxpayers. Well, our humble submission is that it is 17.5D is obviously talking about the base amount capitalization, right? GST amount as it is, if you capitalize, you cannot take double benefit, right? And accounting would not allow you to take this double benefit, right? So 17.5D, before we come to the case studies, our respectful submission is that 17.5D, it blocks construction input tax credit for input services of construction, renovation, repairs, reconstruction, additions, alterations, till the time the base amount is not capitalized. GST amount will obviously be not capitalized if you are taking input tax credit. Number one. Number two, for plant and machinery, even foundation or structural support can be claimed as a credit, even if the base amount of this foundation or structural support is capitalized. Okay. However, the Advanced Ruling Authority in Kartikeya projects, AP Advanced Ruling Authority, no, at least I am at my wits end on the way this ruling has been made. The first part of the ruling, the first paragraph, few paragraphs, if you see, you feel that yeah, it is going in the positive direction. It is saying that the applicant has taken purchased the goods like PVC, Gamela, insulation tape, etc. for the construction of the immovable property. However, it goes on to hold that if a person purchases construction material to provide construction services by using the said material, ITC shall not be available. It does not dwell at all on the words to the extent capitalized, right? So I feel that this advanced ruling by the Andhra Pradesh AAR, this is not as per the intention or the wordings of the law. Important now again, as I said, for plant and machinery, even if you are capitalizing the foundation or structural support for plant and machinery, you can take input tax credit. However, if you are not capitalizing any amount, then you can still take the credit of plant and machinery even on land, pipelines, etc., which is blocked. Again, the Advanced Ruling Authority, in the case of Inox Air Products Private Limited, the Advanced Ruling Authority of Tamil Nadu, it did not dwell on this aspect, and it simply laid down that the GST paid for lease of land was for building plant and machinery, and therefore it will continue to be blocked under 17(5)(d). But our respectful submission is that this lease rent was not capitalized in the books of accounts, and therefore the input tax credit on the lease rent paid for the purpose of building a plant and machinery would be eligible under section 16 and not blocked under 17(5)(d). Now, I saw one of the participants had raised a query on solar power plants. Now, we have dealt with this in wide detail. I will tell you a little bit of history before I go on to answering your question whether the input tax credit for installation of solar power plants in a factory or in a building would be available. Friends, across the country, the GST on solar power plants was ruled by the advanced ruling authorities as being a works contract service and leviable to 18% GST as a works contract service. They held that the solar power plants are immovable property, and under section 2 subsection 119 of the CGST Act, any service in relation to immovable property would be construed as works contract, and therefore the whole activity of installation of solar power plants would not be a supply of the plant itself, but would be a composite supply of works contract service. We represented before the Ministry of Commerce and through them the Ministry of Finance, and on 1st of January 2018, it was accepted, and a composite rate of 8.9% was levied on the installation of the EPC contract of installation of solar power plants. The notification held that 70% of the value of the EPC contract would be considered to be as a goods of solar module chargeable at 5%, and balance 30% would be considered to be as a service taxable at 18%. So 30% of 18%, 5.4%, 70% of 5%, 3.5%. So 3.5 plus 5.4, a composite rate of 8.9% effectively was levied on the supply of the composite supply of goods and services for installation of a solar power plant. It was also accepted by the ministry that the supply of solar power plant is not an immovable property because the solar power plants can be dismantled without being substantially destroyed. The question you ask yourself every time when there is a question of whether a property is an immovable or a movable property is whether the property can be dismantled without being substantially destroyed. The same was held by the Apex Court in the case of Sirpur Paper Mills, where it gave the example of a Tulu pump, water pump, whereby it held that the water pump is embedded to the ground by means of screws and bolts to prevent it from wobbling and consequential damage. It does not make it into a immovable property because it can be dismantled without being substantially destroyed. Similarly, in the case of solar power plants, the solar modules can be dismantled without being substantially destroyed and again remantled as a solar power plant. Therefore, the supply of solar power plant is not a supply of immovable property. It is a composite supply of goods, that is the solar modules and works contract service, whereby it has been artificially deemed that 70%, that is the principal component, is the solar module and 30% is relevant to the service of works contract which is provided, that is the civil service which is provided. Therefore, the input tax credit on these solar power plants composite supply would be eligible under GST. The same was also held by the instant ruling of the Tamil Nadu AAR in the case of KLF Nirmal Industries Private Limited. So very, very important judgments. Again, an important judgment. Many a times, the suppliers, they have a technical glitch in registering, right? Mr. Sachin, I've got your question. Please keep on typing. I'll answer your question on these solar power plants at the end of the session. Now, the instant case, the Kerala High Court, in the case of St. Joseph Tea Company, it has given a very landmark judgment. In the instant case, the St. Joseph Tea Company, initially due to technical glitch, it could not register itself in 2017, but could registered only in March 2018. Therefore, it could not file its GSTR 3B returns, GSTR 1 returns during that period, and the recipients could not take the input tax credit. The Honorable Kerala High Court, in this judgment, it has held that the input tax credit could be claimed by the recipients on the basis of the invoice, while GST portal cannot be opened for filing those returns, but manual returns can be submitted by the instant taxpayer to the department, and on the basis of those manual returns filed, the GST paid through DRC3 form and the input tax credit invoices, the input tax credit can be availed during the impugned period by the recipients. So very, very important judgment, friends. Those of you who face technical glitches or inordinate delays from the department's end while taking the registration, you can always go for a writ jurisdiction, you see, under these cases, and I'm sure on the basis of this judgment of Kerala High Court, a considerate view would be taken by the respective High Court also. Friends, another important issue, again, you see the 17.5 input tax credit, it is evolving by the day. And as I told you, in the case of that 17.5B1, vessels and aircraft, one of the joint commissioners in one of the states, she has taken a view on the basis of certain conjunctures and premises. But these views would be taken by the field officers, and sometimes which is not the view of the commissionerate, because they are quasi-judicial authorities, they can take a view. But this 17.5 would keep on evolving. Similarly, in the case of ARS Steels and Alloys, the Madras High Court has taken a very, very considerate views of 17.5H. Now, 17.5H blocks the input tax credit in case of goods lost, stolen, destroyed, written off, or distributed by way of gift or free samples, disposed of by way of gift or free samples. The question before the instant High Court was whether normal losses or even abnormal losses during manufacturing would be considered to be as goods destroyed and thus be blocked under 17.5H. The Honorable High Court has said that losses during manufacturing process. It is a part of the business process, and therefore it is not due to any external factor or compulsion, right? And therefore it would not be blocked, and there would be no requirement of reversal of ITC for manufacturing losses. Friends, during the Kerala floods, I remember we dealt with a case where our taxpayer was a dealer in laptops, right? And during the Kerala floods, the laptop got damaged and thereby was sold as a considerable discount, possibly say 40-50% of discount. And it resulted in a loss on that laptop. The view taken by the commissionerate was that the sale of these laptops at 40-50% discount showed that these laptops were destroyed, and therefore input tax credit was required to be reversed in the instant case. Friends, our humble submission over here is that there is a difference between damaged and destroyed. Destroyed would mean an irreversible damage, while damage would mean that the instant laptop would be sold as a laptop. The doctrine over here was the doctrine laid down by the Honorable Supreme Court, where if a chattel is sold as a chattel, laptop is sold as a laptop, it would not be considered to be destroyed, but it may be a little damaged. In case the goods are damaged, then there is no requirement of reversal of input tax credit. Only when there is an irreversible damage or destruction of the goods, it would result in reversal of input tax credit under 17(5)(h). Again, a question many a times, you see in the case of this brand Jockey, right? It was held by the advanced ruling authorities that sales promotion items would be considered to be free samples, right? Or disposed of. Our humble submission is again in that case also, it is not a gift or a free sample or disposal by way of free sample. It is an expense of the business for furtherance of business, and therefore input tax credit cannot be denied and asked to be reversed under 17(5)(h). Again, a landmark judgment by Honorable Chhattisgarh High Court in the case of Balco, where 39% of the shareholding of Balco, Bharat Aluminium Company, rests with the central government. Even this company had to go to the High Court, right, contesting against the CGST authorities, whereby in again a very beautiful judgment, the Honorable Chhattisgarh High Court had allowed the input tax credit on coal used for generation of electricity for a township where the employees were residing in case of a factory located in a remote area. The Honorable High Court has said that Section 16, the words used furtherance of business, is very, very wide, and the facts of the case in each aspect has to be taken, and no blanket denial of input tax credit should be there. If a factory is located in a remote area, then no employee would want to go there, and obviously the employer would have to give them arrangement for residence so that they can have the factory in that remote area and develop it. Well, we as tax consultants, we as indirect tax professionals, we keep on thinking law, no GST law, we keep on seeing commas, full stop in the law, which is very, very important. But we have to also have the knowledge of Constitution of India. We have to see that there is air, there is water, there is mankind, there are lands which require to be developed. There is a larger interest of a nation which needs to be catered to, and which is the requirement of the GST law also. And therefore, sometimes you have to interpret the law in a more wider sense. Facts of the case are very, very important. Whenever we are filing cases in the High Court, we always say that facts is very, very important, and the counsel is only as strong as the client. The more the facts are given to the counsel, the better representation would be made, and there would be better chances of a positive order in that case. Ocean freight, GST. Friends, we all know now the status of Mohit Minerals case in the Supreme Court. Notice was served in the case of Mohit Minerals by the Supreme Court, and the affidavit was required to be filed by the respondents in that case. Within 6 weeks, the notice was served on 6th of January 2021. It is important to note that the Honorable Apex Court, while serving the notice, did not order a stay on the decision of the Honorable Gujarat High Court in the case of Mohit Minerals, declaring GST on ocean freight as ultra virus. Therefore, the question is, do we stop paying GST on ocean freight? Do we ask for a refund of GST already paid on ocean freight, or what to do? So the instant case of Comsol Energy Private Limited, they applied to the same High Court, that is the Gujarat High Court, which had declared the GST on ocean freight as ultra virus, and the Gujarat High Court has held that the GST already paid on in the case of ocean freight needs to be uh, refunded to the taxpayer because it was not collected under the authority of the law as envisaged by Article 265 of the Constitution of India, and but it was not under Section 54 of the GST Act, but under Section 17 of the Limitation Act, the refund was to be granted, right? So the question now is what to do outside Gujarat, right? Or even in Gujarat. Well, our submission is that if you are getting the input tax credit on the GST paid, then until and unless the Supreme Court decides on the matter, till that time, as a prudent taxpayer, one should keep on paying the GST and keep on taking the input tax credit. However, in case you are not getting the input tax credit, then a decision needs to be taken. Friends, as an honest taxpayer of the country, if there is a law of the land which is not struck down by the Honorable Apex Court, then you have two ways out. First, to follow the law as it is until and unless it is struck down by the Apex Court. Or if the Honorable High Court's decision is not appealed by the respondents in the Supreme Court, or to challenge the provision and then take a decision. So if our respectful submission in this is that if you want to not pay the GST on ocean freight, or you want a refund, first important thing is challenge it in your jurisdictional high court and then go for such a decision. So these were the important issues in input tax credit in GST. Now we come to this scheme RoDTEP, which was finally notified by notification number 19 on 17th of August 2021. The rates for 8,555 items have been declared, and we understand it is not even close to the expectation of trade and industry in most of the cases. Friends, first of all, we have to understand what is RoDTEP. We had done various studies of various industries, right? In RoDTEP, while we had applied to the ministry for a suggested rate, India has lost the case under Article 3 of the WTO. whereby the MEIS scheme was discontinued as being not as per the WTO norms. The RODTEP scheme is a scheme for refund or remission of the duties and taxes already paid and which have not been otherwise credited to the exporter. The concept is very clear. Duties and taxes which have already been collected by the government. I'll just share my PPT. It has. Uh, yeah. So the scheme is that the duties and taxes which have already been collected by the government are now being reimbursed on the basis of some approximation by the drawback committee and on the basis of suggestions from trade and industry. However, in many cases where the suggested rate was 6%, 7%, we are seeing it has been notified as 1% or 0.5%. Friends, it has been again and again held in this notification 19 that the RODTEP scheme would be limited to budgetary constraints. Our respectful submission is that it is a reimbursement of the taxes already collected by the government. So there is no question of budgetary constraint, or there should not be any question of budgetary constraint when the WTO norms are very, very clear that duties and taxes cannot be exported, right, as a part of the value of the export. So this is something which needs to be represented before the Honorable Minister of Commerce and Industry. On Monday in Delhi, we are having a meeting with the Honorable Minister and the DGFT department on how to improve the exports, and we will certainly put up this point before the Honorable Ministry. Now, there are other issues in this RODTEP scheme which should be represented very, very quickly to the ministry. Now, the very object of this scheme under 4.54 is that duties and taxes, even prior stage cumulative indirect taxes on goods or services in production or in distribution, that should be reimbursed, right? So you should focus on these objects of the RODTEP scheme when you are making the representation. Hence, all the issues in budgetary constraint that should be contested on this ground or at least represented on this ground. Again, in point 4 of para 4.54, they have said that it will depend upon the overall budget or outlay for RODTEP scheme, which has not yet been finalized. So, gentlemen, you are required to finalize that budget on the basis of the representations or at least a opportunity of hearing to trade and industry being granted, not just come out with any and every rate. Then what is the meaning of representing? So many industries have represented with the suggested rate, right? Right. There and various sectors, this scheme would be operational from 1st of January 2021, other than EPZ, FTZ, EOU, advance authorization, those taxpayers which are taking those benefits, right, under para 4.55, 10, 11, and 12. So there would be a stage-wise implementation. However, the effective date would be 1st of January 2021. Again, they are saying that the changes may be brought in during the period and the scheme may be stopped for certain sectors during the year on the basis of budget control measures. Now, once you have already collected the taxes, you are yourself saying that this is a reimbursement of the taxes already collected. Then where is the question of budget control measures? The budget has to be provided for this scheme. This is our respectful submissions. The rebate, again, a very important clause now, even in GST, now in RODTEP, MEIS, everywhere, is that it would depend upon collection of the export proceeds. But luckily, unlike MEIS, it is very important that first RODTEP would be granted, even though the money is not realized. So if you are exporting in this month, you can apply for RODTEP in the next month. Maybe you receive the money after 4 months, right? But you have to receive the money within 9 months as per the FEMA regulations. If you do not receive the money within 9 months, you have to refund the amount of benefit along with interest. In ROSTEL scheme for apparels, the rate of interest is 15%. I suppose in RODTEP also we are looking at 15 to 18% of interest, right? Now, as already notified in the Customs Act in the last 2020 budget, this would be an online procedure where online scrips would be granted and there would be a credit ledger in which the credit of these scripts would be granted and these scripts would be transferable online. The entire mechanism would be notified going forward. Para 4.55, friends, is very, very important and you should go through it for ineligible items in RODTEP. So, exports through transshipment, where the goods are originating in the third country and it is being transshipped through India, that would not be eligible for RODTEP scheme. Export of imported goods, not eligible. Where minimum export price are notified, products which are restricted, prohibited, deemed exports, not eligible. For products on which advance license is taken, EOU supply, FTZ, EPZ, SEZ supply under 10, 11 and 12. So all those units under SEZ, EOU, advance authorizations, those of you who have taken, you have to wait, right? A scheme, maybe a lower rate would be granted for the RODTEP for these companies, right? So again, clause 14 is very, very important, friends. Those who are exporting to Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar through land customs and non-EDI ports like Nepalganj, Sanauli, etc. Many of these ports are non-EDI ports. This clause 14, 4.5514 should be represented before the ministry, and where it is notified that for export through non-EDI ports, RODTEP would not be eligible. Now, this was not there in MEIS time. This is a new clause which has been brought in. RODTEP, this should be represented before the ministry. Of course, on Monday, 23rd, when we are meeting the ministry and the Honorable Minister, we would be representing, but all the entire trade industry and other associations should represent, especially the states which are bordering Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, and those associations where a lot of their members are exporting to these countries. They should represent, and I feel that there has to be a mechanism to grant RODTEP scheme after due diligence for these ports also. The export through these ports should not be left out. If required, these non-EDI ports should be made EDI. Nobody is stopping from making the non-EDI ports into EDI, right? So this clause 14 is very, very important. I feel it is a hardship on the taxpayers, the exporters who are exporting through non-EDI ports. For broad 4.57 capital A para, it says for broad level monitoring outcome framework, OOF, output outcome framework. So your RODTEP benefit as a percentage of GDP would be calculated, and in case it is found to be very high, your rates may be reduced going forward, or maybe the scheme could be halted during a financial year. The rates can be further reduced going forward in the next financial year, which will be notified 30 days before the start of the financial year. Right? So, friends, it is very, very important that this RODTEP scheme be represented. This is the right time when the budget has not been framed for RODTEP. It would be framed in consultation with the Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Commerce and DGFT should be represented from all the associations, right? And I am sure that with the right raised by the industries, this scheme would further see some more involvement and benefit for trade and industry. The Indian exporters, as it is, although exports are rising, but we see corresponding imports are rising more than the exports, right? And therefore, trade deficit of the country is going down. Many of these sectors like tea, leather, gems and jewelry, engineering products, these sectors are big employment generators. And as per the press release on RODTEP, the RODTEP scheme is very, very important for generation of employment by these sectors, by the exporters, and therefore I'm sure the ministry would take a more liberal view in this case, and maybe the rates would see an evolvement going forward. Rostel scheme for apparels would continue, right? That scheme has already also been further notified till 2024. Friends, Haryana scheme for investment subsidy, as I was saying, this again is a very, very good scheme for those large scale ultra mega projects, even SMEs, even service providers. Friend, please mark, even service provided SMEs whose turnover is not more than 1 crore rupees, right? They can take a reimbursement of SGST in Haryana to the extent paid through the cash ledger. A similar scheme we are working in the state of Assam and the northeastern states. This almost the same scheme has come in Haryana. So any of the companies or any of the organizations who want to start business in Haryana, I think most of you would fall under this Haryana scheme for investment subsidy, and you should go for this. This would be a flow through to your bottom line, and for all indirect tax professionals, this is the right uh, scheme for adding values to your organizations. So this scheme is for new expansion diversification units. And you see, almost all organizations would be covered. You see, large, ultra large projects, service enterprises, SMEs, for import substitution, essential sector enterprises of all categories. So almost all sectors are covered. The scheme has already commenced from 1st of January 2021. So even if you have started your business from 1st of January 2021 in the state of Haryana, well, starting of business in the state of Haryana does not mean you have to start your business for the first time. Whenever you are taking a new GST registration in the state of Haryana with a place of business, you can take the benefit of this scheme, right? Certain amendments in DGFT. So all the firms who have exported under Rostel till 31st March 2020 need to update their BRCs on the DGFT portal by 29, by 15th of September 2021, right? So till 31st of March 2020, all BRCs should be uploaded on the DGFT portal by 15th of September 2021. Various important developments. You see nowadays investigations, summons, search, seizures, investigations, they are the order of the day under GST. In fact, now I hardly see a notice under section 73. I generally see a notice under section 70 for summoning. Even if there is no, it is the first time a hearing is involved, it would be in the form of a investigation via a summon under section 70. And when we go to the department, we see that it is a mere hearing on the basis of some intelligence received from somewhere, so-called intelligence. So various important developments and judgments. In the case of Siddhi Vinayak Trading Company, wherein the Allahabad High Court had held that parallel proceedings could be undertaken under the Circular 37 issued by the CBIC and mirrored by SGST. Parallel proceeding can be taken by the anti-evasion or the intelligence wings of the state or central government and the jurisdiction. So that judgment of the Allahabad High Court was contested in the Honorable Apex Court by Siddhi Vinayak Trading Company, and the Honorable Court also did not want to interfere with the judgment of the Honorable Allahabad High Court, right? So the key point is White Circular 37 dated 15th of, sorry, it's not 37, it is dated 5th of October 2018. It is very clear that parallel proceedings, one by an intelligence unit of SGST or CGST and one by the jurisdictional officer, can be started under GST, and that cannot be challenged now after this judgment of the Honorable Apex Court in Siddhi Vinayak case. Attachment. Now again, attachment is not only bank attachment. Attachment is of receivables, attachment is of other property, and we see even in this budget, section 83 has been considerably widened while it is not notified as of now. The Bombay High Court in the case of Implement Impex Private Limited has held that the attachment cannot happen for more than 1 year, right? Order needs to be passed within 1 year of the attachment. Same is the case under Circular 131 in case of risky exporters. Those of you who are exporters, you know many of the exporters who were doing refund on payment of duty, they were tagged as risky exporters. So risky exporters, bank attachment, any other attachment, they cannot continue for more than 1 year. We have filed various writs in various high courts in the case of bank attachment, risky exporters. Many a times we see the moment we file the writ petition itself, where the attachment or the tagging under risky exporters is for more than 1 year, immediately the risky exporter tax or attachment, that order is vacated, right? So more than 1 year, anytime you can approach the High Court and we are sure you will get a positive order. Friends, section 83 again not notified till now, but that has gone through change in this budget. And even after the initiation of any proceeding under chapter 12, 13, 14, 15, sorry, chapter 13, 14, 15, mind that the proceedings under section 67 or any proceeding, even a summon, that has to be just initiated. So just after a summon notice, even if before the day of the hearing, an attachment can be made, right? After this amendment to this section 83 is notified, and not only the person to whom the summon is made, but even any person who is a believed beneficiary of any intended fraud on the exchequer, the attachment can be done for that person also. So if the summon is to a supplier of alleged fake invoices, after the summon is given to the supplier, immediately the recipients bank account can be attached, receivables can be attached. So this GST regime, it is going in a very you see coercive manner, and therefore now for one of the companies, on a large taxpayers, we are doing vendor due diligence. So for every vendor you have to do due diligence, you have to have their 3B returns, you have to have their GSTR1 returns, you have to have their profiles, right, in your system, so that whenever in case such a thing happens on that vendor, your bank account, your business assets are not attached, right? So vendor due diligence, friends, is very important, right? Even vendor due diligence you should do for large enterprises. I'm talking about vendor due diligence you should do as per the GST audit manual, as notified by the as presented by the CBIC in October 2019, right? However, the apex court has laid down certain disciplines with regard to bank attachments and other attachments. How far they are going to be followed is something to be asked. The Honorable High Court has held that the commissioner should have a reason to believe, and that reason to believe should be in the form of an opinion, which should be documented, right? It should not be a mere reason to suspect. There is a difference between a suspicion and a belief. Belief is a more strong word, and therefore, when there is a reason to believe, that has to be in the form of an opinion, and that has to be documented by the commissioner before attaching the assets of any organization. There should be dual safeguards which would be provided to the taxpayers whose bank or any other asset is sought to be attached. He should be given an opportunity of hearing and to submit his objections. Very important. You cannot just attach the assets of an organization just by passing an order without natural justice. And most important, bank attachment or asset attachment should be a measure of last resort, right? It is not that you call somebody for a summon, initiate an investigation, and without the person coming and appearing for the summon, you go ahead and attach the receivables or the assets of the organization. There has to be an opinion, there has to be a reason of belief, and that has to be a measure of last resort. A similar flyer you can see in the matter of investigation, search, seizures by the CBIC. It is available on the CBIC website. Friends, again, very important in the case, see, whenever there is an investigation and whenever there is a statement which is given by you under coercion, it has to be retracted. In the instant case by an importer called Prime Steel Processors, it was held by the CESTAT Chhattisgarh, that Chandigarh, that the instant importer, he imported scrap. Some hollow pipes were found in the scrap, and the importer gave a statement that a spot assessment to be done and the material to be released. After that, he did not retract his statement and directly went to the CESTAT. The CESTAT held in favor of the department, and it held two important things. In case it held that it were actually hollow pipes, then why did not the importer ask for mutilation of the pipes at the time of release order? Number two, the statement where the admission was made, right, by the importer for spot assessment and accepting the spot assessment, that itself is an admission. And again, there was no retraction of that admission, and therefore the case was dismissed by the Honorable CESTAT Chandigarh. So friends, it is very important, in case a statement is given by you during any investigation or any such procedure, you should retract it through an affidavit. So during investigation, summon, search, seizures, before a demand is raised by the concerned intelligence authority, can they give you a written advice to pay? Answer is no, as was held rightly by the Telangana High Court in the case of Deemed Distributors Private Limited, right? Friends, another important circular 157, which has, sought to confuse, I'm sure, which would be challenged going forward for the wires against the Honorable Apex Court suo moto order. So, as you all know, the Apex Court on 23rd of March 2020 had issued a suo moto order for extending the limitations under general or specific law for all judicial and quasi-judicial proceedings. Now, the hearings in case of show cause notices, the hearings by commissioner appeals, filing of appeals to the commissioners, all are quasi-judicial proceedings. Again, that suo moto order was extended, signed by on 27th of April 2021. Now, this circular 157, it creates three different classes. And it says that proceedings for compliances, right? Although proceedings or compliances, although they may be quasi-judicial, show cause notices, reply to show cause notices, appearance for show cause notices, hearings, all of this may be quasi-judicial, but the Supreme Court suo moto order does not apply for these proceedings, and these proceedings have to go on. The third class it creates is for appeals by taxpayers or tax authorities against any quasi-judicial order. And this class, it says this limitation has been extended by the suo moto order of the Apex Court. Now, how much this is as per the intent of the suo moto order of the Apex Court, that will be contested possibly going forward. However, the Delhi VAT authorities have taken cognizance of the suo moto order, but they have already taken it only for appeals because it is in the erstwhile regime and there is no show cause now in the VAT regime. Friends, very, very important issue where it was held by the Telangana High Court. Now, I have deliberated it in various forums, I think previously also in the colloquium of Will GST and Tax Connect, I deliberated this. Say, for example, you have paid an excess tax while clearing the bill of entry. You have not taken the benefit of an exemption notification. Then what are the options in front of you to claim the refund of such excess payment of duty? Friends, it was held by the Apex Court in the case of Sri Hari Chemicals that you can, of course, get a refund of it. However, in case of ITC Limited, it was held by the Honorable Apex Court in September 2019 by the then Justice Mishra that the refund under Section 27 of the Customs Act has to be passed against a order of assessment, and an order of assessment has to be passed, but it was nowhere said that the order of assessment has to be passed under 128 or Section 149. So in this case, the Telangana High Court in the case of Sony India Private Limited, it has held that in case of such refund application, a rectification can be filed under Section 149. And on the basis of that rectified order, a refund can be applied for under Section 27. This was our view also, and we have filed various refunds in various high court, various commissionerates in customs. So you have three options. What we suggest is you take all three options. First is you go for an appeal against the bill of entry, which is assessed. I can tell you the result also. In most of the cases, the commissioner appeals would remand it back for reassessment, right? And when it goes for reassessment, the officer would not have any other option. But if there is a notification, then he has to pass an order with the exemption, right? Once you get the order, you go for section 27 refund. Simultaneously, in case your application for appeal under 128 is time barred, it is more than 60 days from the date of bill of entry, then you go under section 149 for rectification of the bill of entry. Once you get it rectified, then you go under section 27 for the refund of the tax paid in excess, right? So very, very important. And there are various case laws. Sri Hari Chemicals, as I said, the Sestat, Bangalore, Bennett and Coleman case, all of this are in your favor. Friends, in one of the cases, one of the taxpayers which we are still, contesting before the respective commissionerate is one of the taxpayers. He did a glitch while filing the GSTR1. When the export was done without payment of duty in the shipping bill, he filed the refund in GSTR1. He filed the GSTR1 showing with payment of duty. And this was rectified also once, and now the GSTR1 is not allowing the invoice to be rectified from with payment to without payment. Now the refund is stuck up. Friends, section 97, rule 97, capital A of the CGST rules, it addresses these cases for, and it guarantees a manual refund in these kind of glitches. So this can be your tool in these kind of cases where your GST refunds are stuck up. Various other notifications and developments in customs. IC code you can modify till 31st of August. Well, a very landmark judgment by the Delhi High Court in case of Interglobe Aviation Limited is that in case an order has been received for one or two bill of entries, again, if the separate officer in the department, he takes a separate view for other bill of entries and requires you to go out and file appeal after appeal for each bill of entry, that is against the law. And the Delhi High Court has held that the officers have to follow the judgment of the Sestat. The judgment of the Sestats are not mere ornaments and have to be followed in letter and in spirit. Many a times we have seen for the period July to September 2017, when you have erroneously claimed filed a shipping bill ticking A instead of B for the drawback. But in case the higher and lower rate of drawback are the same, even then you are denied the refund of the SGST, the CGST or IGST portion. The apex court in this judgment of Awadh Krupa Plasmotech Private Limited has dismissed this case of the revenue and held that where the higher and lower rates of drawback are the same, then GST refund should be granted to the appellant. There are various other cases by Madras High Court, Madurai Branch, in this case, many other cases by Gujarat and other high courts. But the apex court's decision in this matter stamps the way forward in this. And I feel those, I think across the country, 5,000 or more matters, such matters are stuck up in GST refunds. You can all take the shelter of the decision of this apex court, 2021 bill 75 Supreme Court, and you can reapply for these refunds. At least you can submit a petition to the commissionerates. AEO T1 applications can be continuously renewed, but annually for AEO T1 licenses, you have to submit an annual return. The self-declaration annual return format has been provided, right? E-waybill blocking, if you do not file two GSTR 3Bs, has restarted from 15th of August 2021. By August 2021, you need to update the aggregate annual turnover in all your GSTINs on the GST portal. It is very, very important activity. All taxpayers should do it. All the professionals should do it for all the clients, right? If the aggregate annual tax turnover is wrong, if you feel it is not matching with your records, there is an option to amend it also. Whatever come in the next 10 days, please update it. And you can update it twice, right? Even if you make a mistake once, you can update it, but please do it before 31st of August 2021. Can a writ be filed against an SCN? Many a times we see under GST specifically, writs are filed as a matter of, as a regular matter. But against an SCN, you can file the writ only when it is ultra vires the jurisdiction. That is where the commissionerate has exceeded its jurisdiction while issuing the SCN, or when the SCN is arbitrary and against the law. Other than this, against an SCN, a writ jurisdiction is not possible. Friends, this is again a sestet judgment in case of service tax. In the case of Neyveli Lignite Corporation Limited, liquidated damages are not for toleration of an act as envisaged under Schedule 2 of the CGST Act, and they are not a service. It is not an activity which is performed by the recipient of liquidated damages to the supplier of the or the payer of the liquidated damages. We have been deliberating this in various conferences. So in this case, our view is very clear from the very beginning. Service versus dispatch of an order. The mere dispatch of an order would not amount to service. If you can prove that you have not received an order, then the onus, the burden of proof is on the department to prove that dispatch has been done. Even if you are a NGO, you are a trust and you are supplying medicines, water, or any other item, even without a profit, it does not, absolve you from GST liability. So this decision of SAI publications in VAT by the Apex Court in the VAT regime, that we have deliberated this from 2016, that GST does not follow SAI publications. Section 2 subsection 17, which defines business, that is very, very wide. And even if you are carrying on an activity without profit motive, you cannot be absolved of GST liability just for that, right? So friends, thank you very much for your patient hearing, and we would take in questions now. There are various questions in the chat box. Just a moment. Yeah. So Mr. Al-Mathur says how the proviso under 3, I'm sure, I think you are talking about 1753, is applicable on travel benefits. Is there any statutory obligation travel benefits? Mr. Mathur, the proviso under 17(5)(b)(3), that is for leave travel concession. If there is a statutory obligation to provide leave travel concession, then only it will be the leave travel, the ITC would be available to the employer. Now, whether there is such a statutory obligation or not, that depends upon on a case-to-case basis, right? So, or even if there is no statutory obligation on the employer for that, it does not mean that proviso under 17.5b3 can be connected to 17.5b1, right? So this is our respectful submission in this case. Mr. Sachin says, can input tax credit be claimed on solar projects? The electricity generated will be used for manufacturing of goods. Yes, Mr. Sachin, I have clarified this, that on solar projects, solar panels installed, ITC can be availed. Mr. Nagraj says we are taking reimbursement of canteen and we are discharging tax. My question, can we stop discharging tax on reimbursements? Mr. Nagraj, our respectful submission in this case is yes, you can do that. Again, the press release in July 2020, 2017 supports your case, right? However, if on a prudent basis you still keep on this, you know, you see, evolving a GST liability, but the input tax credit corresponding to such output supply, which you consider as supply, that can be contested by the department. Okay, Mr. Durgesh says, if you can throw some light on Orissa High Court judgment as well as Flipkart writ before the High Court with respect to Section 17.5. So, Mr. Durgesh, I need further light on this. Which Orissa High Court judgment? Are you talking about the judgment for safari retreats for ITC on construction? If that be so, our contention in this regard is that the ITC for construction, renovation, repairs, reconstruction can be taken for goods or services, and to the extent it is not capitalized, right? For plant and machinery, even if the base amount is capitalized for structure and foundation work, it can be taken. Mr. Jairam Raju says, sir, my client registered in Karnataka and getting commercial rent Karnataka and Kolkata. The same is billed as CGST, SGST for Karnataka and IGST for Kolkata. Kindly advise whether Karnataka registration is enough or should I take more registration in Kolkata. Mr. Raju, the thumb rule is that yes, you should be taking one more registration. We have deliberated this for hours and days together. The question is, if you have a fixed establishment, what is a fixed establishment? It is defined under Section 2 of the IGST Act. If there is a reasonable degree of permanence in terms of human and technical resources in Calcutta, right, to give or to receive service, then you have a fixed establishment. And if you have a fixed establishment in Kolkata, under Section 22 of the CGST Act, you are providing services from Kolkata. If you are providing services from Kolkata more than, and your aggregate turnover is more than 20 lakh, you should take a registration in Kolkata, right? So this is our view in this case. Again, Mr. Mathur says, as plant and machinery has been kept out of 17.5D, why the explanation regarding class capitalization would make it ineligible? Of course, it would not. It would not make it ineligible at all. Okay, Mr. Sachin says, if solar project is installed outside the factory, inside or outside, it does not matter, Mr. Sachin. If it is kind of in your books of accounts, you can absolutely take the input tax credit of this. Mr. Dinanath Gupta says, is ITC available on right to use paid for use of land for 15 years provided by Port Trust for setting up factory building and plant on the said land? It is capitalized not as building but as right to use to be expensed over 15 years as per Ind AS 16. So, Mr. Gupta, the law is very clear to the extent capitalized, right? If you have capitalized it as per whatever accounting standard, if it is capitalized, you cannot take the input tax credit. Okay, so Indani ji has a question. I have a question in continuation to damage and destroy. I have different questions. What we are dealer of laptop and purchase for resale of laptop to our dealers and customers. But sometimes from our stock we pick up some laptop for our employees for office work. Then in this case, shall we need to reverse input tax credit? Indani ji, not at all. You are shifting the item from inventory to capital asset. Both are eligible as input tax credit. You just need to pass a journal entry from stock. You credit your stock and debit your computer and laptops block of assets, right? Input tax credit continues to be available, only the it shifts from inputs to capital goods, right? Mr. Ramesh says whether GST paid on ocean freight judgment will give impact on service tax paid on ocean freight. Read petition already filed, availing for trail. Sir, I feel the same analogy as in GST is applicable to service tax also. The case is the same. So our view for on ocean freight in GST would apply to service tax also. Mr. Ashok Jain, whether remission available when credit of inputs are available? No. That is the whole scheme of RODTEP. If credits are available, no remission is available. Whether RODTEP scheme is eligible for product exported and covered under EPCG? Uh, if it is imported and covered under EPCG, and if you are re-exporting it, of course, RODTEP benefit will be available. You see, RODTEP scheme is different from drawback, right? RODTEP scheme is not only for customs duty, it is also for embedded taxes like GST, etc., etc., on petrol, diesel, etc., etc. So, in my view, it would be available, but still one has to further look at the facts of the case. Okay, now, okay, somebody asks input credit is available and utilized based on a purchase register and not based on 2A. Department audit not yet started from the inception. Please give your advice on this. What will be the departmental stand and preventive measure? Sir, we have discussed this over and over again. So many conferences we have deliberated. Under section 42 of the CGST Act, 42(3) to be precise, in case it is not available on your 2A, the department cannot come only to you. It has to go to both the you as well as your supplier. As per the press release dated 4th of May 2018, if your supplier has not closed down his business, is not absconding, or has not gone insolvent, then the recovery proceedings have to be taken on your supplier and not on you. The same was held by the Madras High Court in the case of DY Bethel Enterprises, right? And it was held in the erstwhile regime by the Apex Court in the case of Arise India Limited, where two doctrines were laid down by the Honorable Apex Court. Doctrine of impossible performance. A bona fide recipient cannot be asked to run after the suppliers and ask them to file their returns. Number two, doctrine of inequality, right? On the basis of this, in the case of reality, in case of Calcutta High Court, Tripura High Court, in other cases, Guwahati High Court, section 16, subsection 2, clause C has been prayed to be read down and to create a distinction between a bona fide and a mala-fide recipient, right? So, you see, we can go on and on this, because I can write a thesis on this topic. We have ourselves, for many taxpayers, we have filed a writ to read down section 16(2) clause C of the CGST Act. The moot thing is that section 42 subsection 3 read with press release dated 4th of May 2018, they make it very clear that directly the department cannot come to you if it is not available in your 2A. Mr. Mahesh Kumar says, sir, we are different variant of business and business wise we register under excise, service tax, VAT. We have claimed the credit on stock lying as on 30th of June 2017 under Tran 1 and we have bill of entry copy under 140 subsection 3. Please confirm whether 140 subsection 3 is correct for traded goods, air conditioner for CVD and SAT, as we are contested that you are already registered under excise law, but we have excise registration for different segment of the products. Please suggest. Mr. Kumar, we have just contested this case. You see, the wordings under provision to section 140 subsection 3 is if you are not registered, right, as a manufacturer or a service provider, then you can take the input tax credit wide 7A of Tran 1 and correspondingly by filing Tran 2. So your route would be Tran 1 and Tran 2, not only Tran 1 in this instant case, right? So you have to see that provision to 140 subsection 3 very, very minutely, right? And on that basis, you have to go with Tran 1 and Tran 2. Mr. Rajmohan Ashokan says whether fabricated structures can be treated as movable property and eligible ITC, considering it can be dismantled without destruction. Sir, in Sirpur Mills case, Supreme Court is very, very clear. If it can be dismantled without being considerably destroyed, it is a movable property. What is the time limit for claiming GST refund in case of ITC accumulated on supplies made to SEZ without payment of tax? Whether time limit of 2 years should be reckoned from the date of receipt of goods by SEZ or from the due date of 3B return? It is very, very clear. The relevant date is the 3B return, right? Mr. Raju says, my client registered in Karnataka and getting commercial rent from Karnataka. I think we have answered this. Mr. Daga says whether compensation received by occupant of a commercial property for vacating the property by new leaseholder will be subject to GST. Again, Mr. Daga, the same analogy can be used. The contract is for lease. It is not for vacation of the property, right? For the schedule to toleration of an act to be invocable and GST to be chargeable, the contract should be for toleration of an act, right? You do not make a contract for vacation of the property. The contract is for staying in the property. The compensation which is paid is a unilateral payment of penalty, right? It is not for toleration of an act. And in this case, again, our respectful submission is that GST would not be applicable. Mr. Ketan says, do we require to update IEC code on DGFT website? Yes, you have to, even if it is showing valid, you have to update it. How to validate when director's PAN number is not updated from folder? So this is a specific application, Mr. Ketan, you can write to us and our office will get back to you because this procedural matters on how to do it on the DGFT website. You see, I think our team can better guide you in this case. Mr. Karthikeyan says, I have network. Okay. So Mr. Dalmia says, can a placement of free medical instrument in the premise of hospital with minimum order quantity purchase agreement is a supply? There are 2 ARs about healthcare and Randox. Can you throw some light on 2 different advanced ruling? Sir, I don't know your specific case, but what the thumb rule I'm telling you, if you have taken input tax credit, then it is a supply. However, if this placement of medical instrument is for a part of the composite contract, then it will not be separately chargeable under GST, right? We have to see your contract and look at your case, specific case. If we export under LUT without tax payment, can we avail the refund under RODTEP? So RODTEP is not a refund, it is a remission, right? And yeah, LUT or with payment of GST refund, that will not deny your benefit under RODTEP, right? You can go with LUT and of course claim RODTEP. Mr. Raju says from Kolkata rent is 4 lakhs. Aggregate turnover, Mr. Raju, I use the word aggregate turnover. Kolkata, you need to get registered. Mr. Okay. Mr. Jhala says, when can be supplies to SEZ or expected to be notified for compulsorily supplied made under LUT and not payment of IGST? I think you are talking about RODTEP, sir. But when will it be notified? Well, that is a question we will ask the Commerce Ministry on Monday, 23rd of August. Mr. Patel, Rahul Patel says a Supreme Court suo motu order to extend limitation due to COVID pandemic is applicable for revision order under 108. Of course, yes. There is no dispute on this. The circular 157 also allows this. When goods sold at lesser rate than purchased due to non-consumption in manufacture and quality is not at mark due to non-consumption for a very long time, it is acceptable, Mr. Rajendra. It is acceptable. There is no law under GST which says that you see you cannot sell the goods at a loss. Mr. Vikas says, what can be the rationale behind keeping iron and steel out of RODTEP scheme? Sir, on Monday we will ask the Commerce Ministry. However, their press release is very clear. They feel you are minting money, right? And so many companies, many companies, they have paid billions and billions of dollars of your debt. So they feel that you don't need the benefit of the RODTEP scheme, right? So that is the rationale I feel. Mr. Rajendra, again, section 17.5 would apply to what, Mr. Rajendra? I mean, there are so many questions. Okay, when goods are sold at lesser rate. Yes, I told you, 17.5 would not apply. If chattel as a chattel, if you are selling the goods as the same goods, and if they are not damaged irreversibly, even if you sell a 100 rupee good for 50 rupees, it is not considered to be destroyed and ITC need not be reversed. That is our respectful submission in this case. So thank you, friends. Thank you, everybody, for we have answered all the queries which were asked. Thank you very much for joining this session. And next month, again, we'll have the colloquium for the recent developments on indirect taxes. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and for your involved presence. Over to you, Samir.
Thank you, Vivek. As usual, we always overshoot the time. But good thing is that you managed to answer all the questions, and that's what the benefit is. Having a live session, and I'm sure all the participants have made full use of it. So thank you everyone for joining on Saturday morning, and we will continue to have it this session in coming months. So hope to see you in the next month when we have this session. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you everyone, and have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Priyanka.
Thank you, Vivek sir, for your valuable deliberation, and thank you everyone for joining. We will be conducting this kind of webinar every month, and we will be sharing the PPT with everyone. Thank you.